This podcast is recorded on Aboriginal land. We pay our respects to elders past and present and recognise that sovereignty was never ceded.
Hello, welcome back to the Radical Online Leftist Pipeline podcast. I'm Jordan Vanden Lam.
I'm your best friend, Tom Tanaki.
And I'm Celeste Little.
And Mitch is deceased. He will not be joining us tonight.
He's dead. We watched him die, actually. I never expected to watch him die.
Especially. But the show goes on with or without Mitch. Mitch will be editing. So I think usually what happens is when he's not here, we talk a lot of shit about Mitch and then he has to listen to it like twice as he edits it.
Fuck you, Mitch. Edit this here, Mitch. Fuck you. Edit this here, Mitch. Fuck you. Fuck you. Fuck you. Fuck you.
The part of Mitch will be played by my dog Stella, who has joined us tonight.
Perfect. Great replacement. Actually, speaking of the great replacement.
My ears pricked up by having heard that, and you just happened to say those words. But that is a fucking segue. That is a hell of a segue.
I'm stoked about that. I reckon you take it from here, Tom.
Oh, yeah. Look, we were going to devote a little bit of time of chitter-chatter to the fact that the National Socialist Network did what they have been doing for quite some time, which is leaping onto any issue that they could come at from a race angle, white supremacist race angle. They did it with the recent stabbing and subsequent machete ban related to the attack at Northland Centre. And they went outside Northland's shopping centre with a very explicit banner. I mean, and I don't need to repeat what it is. If you're over the news story, you'll know what I mean. And if you're not over the news story, you can look at it in your own time. But it's just horrible filth, and it's attempts, as I said, to redirect the issue, to their preferred one, which is all they ever do, you know what I mean? A lot of these issues don't mean anything to them. They're not interested in most of the political issues of our time. And it's reminiscent of every other stunt they've done, but obviously most recently and most notably for many people, the mid-election thing, which we talked about in this podcast, crashing, or interrupting an Anzac Day dawn service with booing because they were trying to, ostensibly because they were complaining about the fact that there was a welcome to country being held there. But in reality, just as a recruitment strategy. And these people, as we said, we talked about this. Well, I talked about it in my interlude on the podcast, which I sent in a few weeks ago. These people don't give a shit about the machete ban. They don't give a shit about the welfare of young people at Northland Shopping Centre. They don't give a shit about welcome to country any more than they care about anything and everything that they see as being heresy in their ludicrous vision of a enclave white Australia, carved out for them. So this is all very well familiar. Anyone who's ever bothered to listen to me over anything has listened to me for several years now, since the inception of this group. Repeat myself ad fucking nauseum. This was certainly a more prolific banner, but it was absolutely the same kind of thing, and it was like with the other stunt. The only point of it was to get them some more members because they need 1,500 signatures to launch a political party. So that's what they'll be doing at some point. They need to get more attention for that. And again, sorry for broken record here, but I regularly sort of, you end up in a tough situation, don't you? Because you want the attention on these people for the right reasons, or you want the right people. You want the activist left I want the left concerned and ready to pounce, as it were. You know what I mean? I want them to be ready for these people to gander them, ready to throw hands if it comes to it.
Mhm.
I want them to be prepared to deal with these people, you know. But I don't necessarily want the mainstream media constantly putting them on primetime 7 News because that's what they want.
Mhm.
You know, and all this, you know, it's a boilerplate coverage at this stage, isn't it? It's like, shocking group, shocking
Yeah, every time they
group.
fucking do anything.
Yeah, a shocking group does a shocking thing. And look.
And we're helping them.
Yeah, shocking person does shocking thing. Here's the politician that introduced 20 draconian anti-democratic laws to deliver a quotable saying that we should have 20 more anti-democratic laws. Here's Devere Abramovich, who thinks that every single lefty in Victoria should be thrown in jail, you know, extrajudicially executed. Here's what he has to say about what happened to these people. You know, we get these ringing quotes, and this informs the process, doesn't it? You know, we just end up with a thing where everyone goes, and I've noticed this. Eventually, it's like even the lefties, like. We all tend to do it. I'm not really shaming individuals or what have you. If you did this, I totally understand why you did it. But a lot of us tend to go, oh, well, you know, you cop them really hard. Well, what about, you know, you let them do whatever stunt they want. Why did you cop us so hard? Which is a fair question. It would be a fair question to ask if you weren't talking about fucking stormtroopers. You know what I mean? Like, who really, really are what we on the left side are. They're armed will of the state, if you will, and they're never going to equitably police anything. So what's the fucking point, in my humble view, of asking why they won't equitably police us versus them? You know, but we all do it. But we do it because we can never see these fucking people. Well, what are we supposed to do? You know, I gotta give it to anyone that says that. You got to talk about the cops or ASIO to a degree, or someone, because they're like, well, I never see them. Yeah. Where are they?
Where are they at 3 a.m.?
Thank you. And then this is the thing. See, I had a little bit of a rant about this stuff. I was like, well, look, everyone I know, we just got to all, to my view, I was like, we've got to remember that our response is key here, at least, because their eyes are always on us. And I know it affects their morale, their esteem, and they're all, you know, like they're going to lose their momentum at some point. We can help that. And it's like the angle that we always need to press with these fucking people is like, we only ever rock up for 5 minutes for a flash mob. That's all you ever do. You know, you're like
do your arts and crafts, rock up for a flash mob, and then fuck off in the cover of darkness.
Flash mob. Yeah. I used to do promotional flash mobs. A Million Flag Patriots was promotional flash mobs. You know, back in the day it was, but it was purely about irritating the right and putting them into a tailspin. It happened to work, you know what I mean? They do similar things, you know. I feel qualified to comment on all that sort of thing. You know what I mean? That's all they do. They've got no interest in actual confrontation with anyone. And the last time they had actual confrontation with anyone in a sort of a direct way, anyone who, you know, like the anti-fascists and what have you, a lot of them got bashed and run away in Thornbury. And they've been very things since then. But I said all that anyway. I had this rant. And then I realised from a Channel 7 piece, which came, as I understand it, from one of the shopping centre released or put out a statement of some description and put in its CCTV footage. Oh, they said they released it and they said, you know, according to our footage, these people were here for a few minutes at around 3:30 in the morning. and oh, dearie me. And, like, it's funny to me because between 3 and 4 a.m. is usually what's known to people as the witching hour. You know, it's where paranormal experiences happen to people. And these people at this stage are like that because no one ever sees them in real life. You know what I mean? They're like spectral apparitions that show up in photos, spooky white supremacists, spooky white ghosts. You know what I mean? Because they never fucking show up anywhere, you know? They seem to, you know, the last several times they get soup cans thrown at them. They get mobbed and harassed and get all their tyres let down or they get beaten up. Anyway, look, all of this is to say that, you know, I got to say another thing. I did just find, just before we began this episode, we found a ringing quote by Premier Jacinta Allen, who it must be said, along with her predecessor Andrews, really helped to pave the way for groups like this through the introduction of many repressive and anti-democratic and anti-protest laws that these people make their hay out of deliberately falling afoul of and then contesting in court. That's how they get there. That's likely why they had such an explicit banner this time, because they'd be delighted to go through the racial vilification stuff, you know. Anyway, she came out there and she made a quote about it. But I must say, apart from that, I didn't see a huge amount of the material. And I have been wondering lately, you know, if perhaps their shock politics, I don't know where this ends up. They're hoping it ends up in them having so many people that they can turn into a political party, right? But I also began to wonder, is the coverage dwindling because they're having to up the shock ante and they can only do that to so much when their format remains the same? It's still all them just standing there at 3:30 in the morning, as the case is now, when no one else is around, with a nasty banner, you know. And within that format, all you can really do is make the banner nastier every time, isn't it? You know, that the format doesn't shift. So I'm interested in whether perhaps there's only so many kinds of foul, white supremacist, nasty, racist things they can write on these banners before the coverage will begin to dwindle. Although that's ever me, ever the optimist, you know. But I do definitely always like to say to my left comrades, I mean, what's the point in speaking to the mainstream fucking media? They're not listening to little on me anyway. But I do like to say to the rest of us on the left, let's all stay uniformly behind reminding these people every time these things happen that let's not forget, you're still just rocked up for 5 minutes, or is this the case now? You're still rocked up in the witching hour. It's not really, you're not actually as staunch as the photos make you look if you've rocked up at the specific hour that the whole 24-hour cycle that you think is the least likely to make you run into anyone. Because believe you me, they're going to run into people at Northland Shopping Centre. You know what I mean? That's like, if there's any one spot that people are going to come out and find these fucking scumbags, it's Northland fucking Shopping Centre. And I'm pretty sure that people would have come up to see them very quickly. I feel pretty confident about that.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, I find myself in two minds with a lot of this. And for those who don't know, I live in the same suburb as Northland. It's you know, a bus ride away from me. It's also where I got my first job, and when I moved over this side of town to come to uni, I worked at Baker's Delight, and I won't say too much about my experiences there, but you know, one thing, like as you've just said, Tom, people will come out if they had have dared to come during the day, because the one thing that Northland has long been, it's been a gathering place for Aboriginal people. It serves a very multicultural community. And that's what it has been all along. So you know, when the machete stuff was happening, naturally I was a little bit terrified for a bunch of people that I know that hang around there quite regularly. That's their shopping centre, and that's the community that it serves, and the community that I choose to live in, because it is this diverse and this black. But I think my thing is, and you know, I do take on board that by sharing. Well, I do take on board criticism that I have seen, that by sharing it in a way, we're giving what was a piss weak 3 a.m. show by a bunch of mouth-breathing, knuckle-dragger Nazis a little bit of airtime and community knowledge. But by the same token, what I do worry about is that far-right politics is just so normalised and such an accepted part of this state, this country, you know, and we do have to say this state because it is the birthplace of things like the United Patriots Front and the True Blue Crew and, oh, God, who else? You could run through them all in 2 seconds, I reckon, Tom. But, you know, it's kind of the, as I've referred to it before, the action-reaction dynamic. The woke state has also been the birthplace of some far-right movements. But you know, it did strike me that, like, Jacinta Allen is making a statement today. It happened 3 days ago. You know, there was actually, even though we don't want to be putting attention on their little recruitment activities and their piss fart flash mobs, we do kind of want politicians to acknowledge there were Nazis that were gathering at Northland. This is a problem, and it's taken them 3 days to do that, which I find that's a bit of a problem as well. So there's my two minds. Yeah, you know, it's.
I can always make these arguments on either end as well, and I think we do. I think we all sort of like flip-flop between, not flip-flop, but, you know, like sit there between two poles of like, you know, take into consideration, please, particularly people in positions of authority, that this is a dangerous development for the targets of these fascists, whether it be one of the many different minority communities that they specifically stand in opposition to. And it must be said, intermittently harass, sometimes for videos out in the streets of the CBD and such. You know, God forbid we'll ever fucking run into them. It'd be lovely. But you know, like also anyone on the left, you know, that they target, you know what I mean? Like any organised activists that they're against, you know, you want people to know about it, but you know, you want people to be made aware of these things, and you want to see that people in positions of authority are there. But you also know how boilerplate this whole fucking process is. We've all, you know, many of us in our positions have seen that years ago they all publish in their little recruitment manual that we want to use the media to help us recruit, you know, which is just, you know, for any group of that kind, any attention stunt grab thing. They base their political organisation on the model of the American Nazi Party anyway, to a great extent. All their stunts, all this shit that they do, you can go back and read about the history of George Lincoln Rockwell and the American Nazi Party in the 50s and onwards. Same shit. Like, it really, really is. They explicitly get a lot of their ideas from them, you know. So it's all very, very tried and tested and very formulaic stuff. So that's what makes us resist wanting to have everyone talk about it. But at the same time, we need to be telling each other, publicly and privately, about these things, you know. We do need to be aware. We need to be aware not just for curiosity's sake. We need to be aware because we need to be ready, you know. We need to be ready for whenever these people decide to rock up for more than 5 minutes, you know. It's happened before. They got booked on the nose and they retreated back again. But this is, I think what's fundamentally important is, as ever, readiness for this kind of thing. Our threats are many and they're varied, but there's not too many political opposition elements out there who'd be willing to get into a scrap with us in the right circumstances, and I think these people are among them, you know, even if they are very gun-shy lately. But I also, you know, I want to talk about the 3:30 a.m. stuff. You know what I mean? When it happens, because it's pretty shocking to me that these people who get to style themselves in the biggest forums, media forums in the country, around their big tough black-clad Nazi thing, are also patently. If you look at the timestamps of their attendance, they're patently fucking terrified of actually doing anything in public. They rock up for 5 minutes and get out of there. And I get to a degree that they're doing it because they don't want to get arrested, and they just want their recruitment video. They just want to be on the age. They don't want to, you know what I mean? They don't want to then get arrested for it. You know, I guess I'll say no one begrudges them that, even though I fucking hate them and I always wish them the worst. But you know what I mean? Like, I can understand strategically that one. But, you know, why did you, if that was your only priority, why'd you rock up at 3 a.m.? It's because if you rocked up at bloody any other time at Northland Shopping Centre, oh, man.
It'd be fun.
That's not a great area. They know that's not a great area for them. I still wanted to get their little video, you know, but you know then, when you think about the time and stuff, you know it's all optics. That's all they are at this stage, still for all this, you know. I know they all train and they punch each other and stuff. They're still all fucking optics, man. They're still, I smell fear when I see that timestamp. 3:30 a.m. smells like fear to me, you know.
Yeah, and like it's also like about what you said before about, like, you know, they can only make their banners more offensive. That's all they can do to be more shocking. Like, they know that, but they also like when we see them, we should make them know that they're not welcome. It's really hard to do that, obviously, when the only person who knows that they're somewhere is ASIO and some poor bastard on the award wage looking at a CCTV camera at 3:30.
Yeah, I know. That's a good point. Yeah,
But,
yeah.
like, we know that what this means is when that stops being effective, when they run out of, slurs to use because they've used them all on their fucking little banners, they're going to escalate. Like, they have to, otherwise they'll stop getting the media pay attention to them, because there's only so many times the Age can be like, they're Nazis, used a slur on a banner again. Also, in the, context of fair and balanced reporting, let's hear from a Nazi. That's normal. There's only so many times that they can do that, and they're aware of that. They know that. And, like, unfortunately, they're not stupid, like a lot of them are. But the people who are planning this kind of stuff, unfortunately, are not. And that, we've got to be ready for that.
We've got to be ready. The 161 Sharps released a statement on their page, the Northern Suburbs Sharps, which was a pretty decent statement. If anyone wants to hear this, go to the 0161 Skins AU page on Instagram. It's a good statement. And it's a good statement, and they felt responsible for sharing that statement because a lot of them are only just, in that area. That's their area, This is known to NSN people, and this probably informs why they had to do it at 3:30 in the morning. They did say, so I direct people, maybe we can put it in the link for the episode.
Yeah, good idea.
It's a relevant episode. And it's just it talks about how, hey, if you see things like this and you want to chip in, well, solidarity is a localised thing and it's also a reciprocal thing. So, come and take part in things in your own area, but absolutely join in, but recognise solidarity is an ongoing thing. So it's a good statement. They did say at one part of it, they said they come to our area after 3 a.m. when transport isn't running and all the shops are long closed for minutes before scattering like rats. Their track record with knives speaks for itself because, a lot of us have seen them rock up with knives here and there. There's no doubt that anyone with a knife, I don't care. I mean, I might sit here in my anti-fascist tone of voice and sort of police it. They're not everything they can't be. I don't mean to say they're not dangerous. I just want to take the wind out of their sails wherever I can. But I do mean it when I talk about how we all need to be ready, because they do. They can't, but they have that fear, you know what I mean? They have that fear, but an afraid person can be a very dangerous one in the right situation, particularly when they huddle together in this sort of like rat king formation like these white supremacists often do, Their own fear makes them dangerous because they are terrified of anyone and everything. They think everyone's coming to get them. I've always found that these racist formations, these waves of these street movements are full of terrified people. They are. They think that everyone's coming to take their stuff, That's what informs the mentality of the racists. This is the person who constantly thinks that they are a victim can summon into their service a great deal of brutality. That's how I always rationalise what a lot of these people do, the nastiness you find in these margins, because these people think they're the ones being hard done by. They think that all the time. That's how they can be so callous,
I just went sideways. You said about racists getting information, and suddenly I was singing that to the tune of Beyonce.
Do you want to sing it? You want to sing it? Like a bit of karaoke at Gummo?
I love a bit of karaoke at Gummo, but no.
Not that one. Everyone head to Gummo's next karaoke night to hear Celeste Little performing Beyonce.
Shout out to Gummo, our mates.
Shout out to Gummo. Hey, listen, anyone knows about these people coming off and then scurrying off like rats, it's the good people at Cafe Gummo. So 100% shout out to them. But Gummo have always prioritised the solidarity aspect afterwards, getting everyone together, doing the fundraisers, getting people together in the same place for positive events. That's what we all need to be doing, We need to be ready for these parasites.
All right. Music thingo here. Celeste, do you want to talk about the duchy?
No, I'm still getting across it, but I just find it like because this was only published an hour ago, so it's obviously been while I've been on public transport. But Geert Wilders quitting the coalition is essentially sending, the Netherlands into an election. And I'm just sort of like, oh, God, this is interesting.
Oh, wow. Okay, I see. I didn't see about all this. Speaking of the far right.
As we've been sitting here, that's popped up on my feed and I posted the link in the chat for us. But, yeah, I'm just sort of like, oh, God, do I want to talk about it? It was pretty... I kept on running into lefties in bars in Netherlands for some reason, all hating Geert Wilders whilst, But I don't know that I'm across it enough to actually talk too much right now. I feel like I need to info gather and go from there.
That's fair. Mine as well.
He demanded immediate support for his proposals to completely halt asylum migration, send Syrian refugees back to their home country, and to close asylum shelters. You callous, brutal fucking maggot. And then they were not willing to embrace all of those plans, and so they left the coalition. Oh wow!
And election kind of thing.
Funny that you got into you went and got into bed with parties that do exactly what they say they want to do, and then when they did exactly what they said they wanted to do, it didn't all work out. Incredible. Yeah. Well, you got to hand it to them. They're at least they're sticking to their guns, But this cannot be said for any of the populist, flip-flopping, spineless, populist right scumbags who fucking jump into the bed with them for their own political ends. I wish them all the worst.
And they'll experience the worst. In actually, no, they probably won't. They'll probably do great because of that flip-flopping.
Maybe, hey. But Geert Wilders himself, this man has just survived so much. There were so many times, like since the rise of the Islamophobic movements throughout Europe in the 2010s and what have you. This man's had so many years of this to his name. These people are just... They cannot be killed off. They're the most hardy cockroaches, And to answer your question earlier, Jordan, about his how long he's been going for, I mean, a lot of these movements, these Islamic phobic movements, have been birthed as a result of, or in the wake of his efforts. So yes, he's been going since the early to mid 2000s. So he's a stalwart of the.
I'd say he's a post 9/11 type. He goes that far. Yeah.
Fuck. Throwback. Yeah, because his whole thing is like, I hate Muslims, ban them from coming in. And then, like, it's kind of Trump that's kind of the only one to successfully do that for a sec. That happened for a bit, didn't he?
There have been far-right formations throughout Europe that have sought power, but there have never been... I mean, there's never been anyone with a nation of 300-plus million who've explicitly come in on a platform, and then resoundingly won on a platform like his. So, yeah. But the work that he put in would never have happened if it weren't for all the hard work done by people like Geert Wilders. It's always funny when I see his name, Party for Freedom. It reminds me of the... shitty little activist group, Islamophobic far-right group that sprung up for a time with the same name in Australia throughout the 2010s. They were called Party for Freedom as well, but they were just like home to a small gaggle of weirdos who were they used to take pingers and then go to rallies.
Incredible.
Can you imagine that? That's one of the earlier things. Yeah, but can you imagine being like a far-right, flag cape wearing racist type who'd take a pinger and then go out to this gaggle of little people?
They were definitely white pingers though, not purple pingers, white pingers.
Alas,
those kind of pingers. No, we all love a good pinger, but I can't agree with you. I'm sorry. Can we just pause there? Do you actually think it sounds great to take a pinger and go to a rally? Because it sounds like a fucking nightmare to me, man.
Not like okay, yes and no, but like I feel like if I'm trying to think about going to a far right rally.
Yeah.
And then that doesn't make sense. Like absolutely not. Like if it was something else, like perhaps, potentially.
I can't think of but I always have a shit time at rallies, right? I don't know about you. My experience of rallies is mostly shit. I remember joyous moments like breaking cop lines and just
Yeah.
running down
Imagine that on
Elizabeth
Pierce.
Street with people just like, and then you look at all the fucking normies on the side of the road just looking at you with their shopping bags and going, oh, you know, and I'm just going, oh, I feel so free. Beautiful moments like that.
Yeah.
We all have our little moments. That
Yeah, put that in slow-mo, some like, you know, like how they do in Hollywood, like make some LSD effects or whatever. You've got a montage, like Tom running through the streets in slow-mo.
If I had
looking
fingers in that
around.
moment, that would have been really beautiful. You know?
Yeah.
Although I don't think I would have. I think I would not have caught the moment to break through the cop lines if I'd had pingers. Do you know what I mean?
You would have been just behind him, maybe.
Just following behind him. Might have tried to chat to the cop horse on the way through.
Probably. touched it.
Actually, knowing me, I probably wouldn't have been able to run because I would have been having too many durries. Do you know what I mean? That's what pingers.
Also fair.
If anyone's had any experiences taking pingers at rallies of any description that are better than what I think they would be like, please, if you could send them through to the inbox, or to our socials, to the page, we can relay them on a future episode of the podcast. So perhaps you'll give me the impetus to do a bit more. You know what I mean? I can think about it. I can go back to it. You know. Yeah.
Nice. Also, before we move on from this story, I do hate that I'm doing this, but I feel like as someone with a Dutch last name, the Prime Minister Dick Schoof is a very funny name.
What's the Prime Minister's name? PM Netherlands.
Dick Schoof.
Look,
Dick Schoof. That is cute. That is cute.
As we know, not you can laugh about that, and now so can I.
Exactly. Dick Schoof.
It's perfectly acceptable for us to laugh. The rest of yous are offensive, but we're okay.
Yeah, no, that's right.
Yeah, I don't usually get that, actually. So, yeah, that's a nice one.
What we do? You said it before, Jordan.
Music.
We'll put some music here. All right. I did want to mark that today we're actually recording on the final day of Reconciliation Week, and Reconciliation Week is bookmarked by the two important dates. One being the date that the 1967 referendum was held, and the final day of it being Mabo Day. And I did want to stop. I was looking before we came online just in case we do get any video bits, and, you know, in the hope that I could put my Torres Strait Islander flag up for it, but I've got no idea where I put that. But as far as political heroes and that go for me, Eddie Mabo is one of those that is right up there. And I did want to acknowledge that the reason why today is Mabo Day is that it's the 33rd anniversary since the handing down of the Mabo 2 decision. This was a guy who at James Cook University was working as a gardener. He liked to go, you know, when he could, he liked to go and sneak into a few lectures and listen in, and I quite like that.
Oh, so he didn't study there. I thought he studied there. He was a gardener there, and that's how he went into classes.
He was working as a gardener there. I think he eventually did do some studies.
Okay.
Anyone from the Mabo family, please correct me if I'm wrong with that part. But at the time that he befriended people like Henry Reynolds and you know, he was actually working as a gardener, and he was going to, you know, sneak into lectures. He was listening. He got speaking to these academics that he befriended, and was talking about his homeland and, you know, where they were with relation to the Torres Strait Islands. And as he was discussing that, it got highlighted to him that actually these lands legally weren't considered his lands, even though he had a ancestral birthright to them. They were crown lands. And so began the process that was the High Court battled to dismantle the false legal doctrine of terra nullius, of land belonging to no one. And, you know, that was an epic fight. It went on for years. The tenacity of that man and those who supported him. He was also a unionist, and I saw the ETU acknowledging that today. So you know, he had political nous, but to take that fight all the way to the High Court and to dismantle terra nullius, to me, I find that, I remember when it came through. I remember all of the fear. Anyone who's seen the documentaries and that have recounted this know what I'm talking about. But I was actually a teenager when the news articles going, and with the Mabo decision, how safe is your backyard? And, you know, it's just sort of, it's not. I'm moving in tomorrow. Years are fucked. But also,
what a brilliant moment.
I remember seeing the fear campaign. I remember seeing John Howard and what he did following that. You know, to me, that will always be a crucial moment. But the Mabo ruling also serves as a bit of a reminder, because whilst legally the fiction of terra nullius, of land belonging to no one, was scuttled through Mabo's ability to prove that this was land belonging to him, that he had an ancestral claim to. The terra nullius mindset of Australia at large still very much exists to this day. There have not been proper land reparations. There's not proper land rights in this country. You know, we still have to get out there every single 26th of January and make these points. And every single time anything remotely Indigenous hits the media, it's pages upon pages of racism. So for me, Mabo is a hero, but he is also a reminder that the struggle to actually educate the masses goes on, to undo the damage that was 200, what was it all up? 222 years, no? Yeah. 222 years. Cook landed 1770, Mabo ruling 1992. 222 years of erasure. The process to undo that long, that much silence, that much ignorance continues to this day. So happy Mabo Day. Shout out to my Torres Strait Islander brothers and sisters. Is a staunch as, and big respect.
Thanks for that, Celeste. That was so rad. Really one of the greatest single blows by like an everyman, using the court system, but greatest blows to like the, I suppose, the colonial mindset, and like we did the blowbacks in terms of the career of Howard. You know what he did in the wake of like the white nationalist response to that, I suppose. You know, all the fear-mongering that happened in the wake of Mabo, you know, Howard used that sentiment to capitalise on, you know, and to create his political career, didn't he? So, but we all know that the white supremacist mind's back, you know, when it's under attack, it bites back.
God, I remember, here we go, she's really showing her age. Good News Week. Remember when that was on originally? Good News Week with Paul McDermott. I remember that when Howard started kicking off, and he did his 10-point plan, the 10-point plan to try and undo some of these gains that have been won legally, whether it was through, you know, the Mabo decision, or it was the native title legislation that happened, and then the Wick ruling. You know, all these things happened at that time. I remember that Howard did his 10-point plan, and 7 points of it were rejected but in Parliament. And Paul McDermott's very wonderful clapback to that was, which leaves Howard with enough points to do a 3-point turn and go back to where he came from. That's how I've remembered that for the last this many years.
Now that the Senate has effectively scuttled John Howard's 10-point plan, we may be facing a double dissolution election in the first half of 1998. In substance, 7 out of 10 of Howard's points were denied or seriously dented, which leaves him just enough to do a 3-point turn and go back to where he came from. Clearly, the Prime Minister didn't start with enough points. He assumed 10 would be enough, when realistically, he should have factored in a few decoy points that he could back down on without actually giving any ground. You know, things like Aboriginal people can only claim land which has their name and phone number written on the back of each square metre. Or pastoral leases extinguish not only native title, but also all hope within 500 kilometres. And native title can only apply to land which is covered by custard to a depth of no less than 3 metres. Now, don't laugh at that one, you know, because at one stage the National Party was very keen on the custard point. But the Nationals do concede that 10 points could be condensed into 1. Fuck 'em. Brian Harradine says it's essential a compromise be reached in the interests of Australia as a whole, which coincidentally is what the mining companies wanted to become. And Noel Pearson called the Prime Minister a miserable moral cockroach, which is a worry because, you know, if there's one of him running around, there's at least 50 more behind the fridge.
God, that would have been about 30 years ago too. Oh my God.
We need to talk about the it's not a death. Why are we calling it a death in custody? It's not a death in custody. Why would why are we? I hate being one of these people. I hate being one of these people that I've always had this fucking. I've seen this little lib impulse to sort of correct every media headline. Headlines are shitty, but why is it called that? It was not anything remotely like a death in custody. That's very fundamentally removed from what actually happened. Why is
I think that I think it's because of the Royal Commission where they expanded the term, like in the terms of reference, what they included custody to be is like fucking. You know,
from the moment you
interact with the police kind of thing, like or maybe it's from the moment of arrest. Who knows? Like I think that's why.
It can happen. It can happen like car chases, for example. From memory, can actually be determined death in custody.
But that's my suspicion. I reckon it comes from the terms of reference from the Royal Commission.
But yeah, I actually agree with you, Tom, and here's why I agree with you. And, you know, and this death, you know, of Kumanjai White happened on Arundel land. It happened on my homelands. It happened in the Coles, where a good proportion of my family members shop. And it happened in the store. And this is what you're getting at because the reality of what went down there was that you had 2 cops. Both of them were off duty, but they've continuously been portrayed as being plainclothes police. One of them had been stood down from a liaison officer position. So he was being, according to some news coverage that has come through from the Northern Territory Independent, was being investigated for previous rough handling of Aboriginal people. So that in itself was a problem. So you know, it's they've framed it in a way that has kind of criminalized the man that was involved. But the reality of what happened there was that Kumanjai White hadn't actually stolen anything. And the reason I say this is because I worked in retail throughout my entire university. The first time I went through university, that's how I supported myself and you know, fed myself in my uni years. And the training was continuously that if somebody was suspected of shoplifting, until they had gone past a point of sale
left
the store, they hadn't actually stolen it, because they still had the opportunity to purchase it. You know, you can't actually assume if somebody is sticking something in their pants, perhaps they've got full hands or something. And, you know, I've whacked a can of Coke in my back pocket whilst walking around a store because I can't carry everything physically, you know. So the problem would have been, had he gone through the point of sale and then walked out the front door, then perhaps he could have been done for stealing stuff. But he hadn't done that. He was in aisle 4 when they took him down. And according to some anecdotal stuff that's come through, which I'm sure, you know, I'm not willing to say too much on, because we don't want to prejudice any sort of processes that may come out of this. But according to some anecdotal stuff that has come out from the people who were in the store at the time, aisle 4, and he was asking people to assist him with paying for stuff. So they can't even accuse Kumanjai White of not wanting to pay for it, because he was looking for ways to pay for food.
To pay for the stuff.
But
this was also, as I understand it, without knowing much of the details, this is a person living with disabilities. That's correct? Yeah.
Yes, he was a disabled man. Was within the system and had a carer.
Yep. Well, I've known people in, I don't remember if you recall from retail, Celeste, but I've known people that have worked in retail, and I've also known people who are disability support workers. And my understanding was that, obviously, while someone, before someone's taking stuff, it can be quite frequent. And again, not being completely unaware of what manner of disabilities, and it's not of any interest to me. It's not my business to know what disabilities he was facing. But again, having known disability support workers, the duty of care usually, and this accounts for people in retail as well, is to support people who perhaps need a bit of help. Rather than sort of simply waiting until they're across the Rhine anyway and then sort of arresting and going that path. Whereas these people, they've gone straight to a brutality that's resulted in murder. I mean, I don't know. I feel like we always end up in these conversations here. I want to be able to say that this is down to a white supremacist attitude.
Yes, it totally is. When you look at, as a lot of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have indicated this past week, we're at a period of time where shoplifting is almost being fetishized, because there's a lot of talk about the cost of living crisis. There's been entire articles about how people are nicking stuff in order to just have something a little bit extra on the table because they're doing it tough. And fluffy bunny articles at that. It's not condemning. It's just sort of saying, no, this has gone too far. The duopoly's fucking us all and something needs to be done. But shoplifting is such a perceived problem in the stores right now, that if you go into a self-service area within Woolworths or Coles, not only have you got cameras above every single self-service, what are they called? Those counter things.
The checkout thing.
Checkouts, yeah. Not only have they got cameras in all of those, they actually have barriers now. So you're being
Coles,
watched. Yeah, and Woolworths. They have them at Woolworths, Woolworths now. They're in the process of. So, they watch you and make sure that you paid for it in order to leave the store. And if you haven't, then you can't. So they're able to put in all these barriers. They're able to acknowledge that shoplifting is pretty widespread, but it sure as fuck doesn't end up. If it's that widespread, we're not seeing a bunch of white people pulled down in an aisle every single week. Like this
that's the fucking like man didn't shoplift. Like his crime was shopping while black, and then like also even if he fucking shoplifted, like that shouldn't be a death sentence.
No.
Like that certainly, like I wouldn't have been murdered by a policeman if I fucking stole a chocolate bar or whatever. Like, that's just not how that works. This is just
You can
disgusting.
expect, or I can expect to be tracked by an AI bit of software, or held at the barrier, or something of that order, and have the police come to our house after we exceed $600 worth of stolen goods.
Yeah. Once it's a major crime.
Whereas if you're a Yundama man in the NT, you can expect to be murdered. Well, this
Literally.
is white supremacist.
Disgusting.
It's just white supremacy in action. I fail to see how this is anything but. It's disgusting. Oh, my heart bleeds for that poor fucking family.
It just, it's, for me, it's so cruel. Yindamu has had to deal with that. It was justice for Walker a couple of years ago. Now it's justice for Kumanjai White. Justice for Yappa, justice for the people. It just keeps happening over and over again. And the fact that, this Walkery man killed by cops who are never called on to act either, apparently, on our interlands, on my homelands. It's really friggin' heartbreaking. People, an Aboriginal man, a disabled Aboriginal man at that, who doesn't have a lot of means, should have the right to just be able to walk around and go about his business. And yet he was denied that by a very racist system. And it's a system that is going to now apparently investigate itself.
Yeah,
that's right. They just ruled out an independent investigation. Which is, there's just no care if there's multiple overlapping vulnerabilities. There's class and financial vulnerability. Obviously, the vulnerability of being a black man in a white supremacist fucking colony. Being a disabled person in need of assistance. Obviously had no ability at all. And this fucking colony doesn't care for people. Does not care. We're not a care-based society or economy. And then there's no accountability, ruling out an independent inquiry. We all know what they're fucking like when they investigate themselves, don't we?
But also, just let them have the independent inquiry, for your own cover. It's not going to do anything. What benefit does this serve to you as a racist state in saying, nah, you know what? You also can't have the fucking independent inquiry. We know it's not going to do anything. We've had billions of them before. What does that serve? That just cements the racism and the prejudice. If the state can just do that, fuck off. There is literally nothing that we've got here unless we actually do something.
Burn it all fucking down. Oh, we all like to say that. We burn it all down. But it's moments like this when you just, what else are you supposed to fucking say,
Yeah,
and you're
so fucked.
This is what gets me, roughly 600 deaths since the Royal Commission, deaths in custody, labelled as such due to the system. And yet, when has a police officer ever been held to account for one of these deaths? It hasn't happened. This in reality should be the test case for this actually happening, but I can just see that it's going to go the same way, and that terrifies me. I hope that I'm proven wrong because, Coles Inn Alice has security guards. They have protocols. Those protocols weren't able to be followed because these two heavies decided to act in the way that they did and cause death. And, when does it end?
When does it end?
Yeah. When is it going to be safe and supported after reading all the fucking below the line comments that I've read in the past week? When is it going to be safe and supported to be a black person just going about your business in a public space?